Hello grade 12, my name is Priscilla SANELANE, but you may simply call me Miss Priscilla, and on this video we are doing an exam prep for your English paper 3. We have already done the scope for your English home language as well as your English first additional language, but in the comment sections of those videos I saw that there are some of you who still need clarity on what your essay really needs to look like. So on this video we are going to go through what your essay needs to exactly look like for you to be able to get the maximum amount of marks that you can get out of your question paper. So this video is going to be divided into 3. In the first section of it, I'm going to make sure that I show you exactly what your essay needs to look like. I have drafted an essay if I was writing using one of the past question papers, so I will put the past question paper or the past question for the essay section on the screen. This applies to both home language and first additional language. The only difference really is the length of the essay and the word count of it, so you will just adhere to it based on which paper you are writing, but otherwise the format is really the same in my opinion. So the question paper that I looked at is first additional language, but it can easily be a topic out of a home language. I would still do the exact same thing that I did here. It would just be longer if it was home language. So that's what we are going to do first. I'm going to show you first the topic that I chose and how I went about doing the draft, doing the mind map, and writing the essay itself. I didn't write the full essay, but I showed you exactly where I would go so that you get the general idea of what it is that you need to do or what the examiner is looking for as they are marking your question paper. And then secondly, I'm also going to go through the recommendation of the type of essay that you need to write in terms of choosing the essay. There is a way that I usually say that I don't let my students go into the exam room not knowing what they're going to write simply because it's paper 3. I know a lot of people say for paper 3 there's no way of knowing what's going to appear, so you cannot just hope for the best that whatever comes up you will be ready for it. But there is usually a method that I use with most of my students to have them walk into the exam room ready and prepared for what they're going to write. The essay they practiced is usually the essay they write in the examination room, so I will show you exactly how you need to do that. And then third, I'm going to go through the questions. There are some frequently asked questions that you have sent in the comment section of my videos. I have tried to reply, but I feel like I needed to say more to elaborate, so I'm going to go through those so that you have more clarity on what I meant and what I was going with that. So first, as you can see, this is a screenshot out of the question paper that I used to take my question from. You can see that we have a different types of topics. The topic that I'm going to use for our example is simply going to be, we're not going to complicate our lives, we are going to choose the first one. So the first one, it says it's my life, so that is the essay that I'm going to write. So first I'm going to show you what I meant when I said a first draft. So you need a first draft, right? This is the rough draft. I was saying in my videos that you don't have to make it a full essay. It doesn't have to be a complete essay. So I'm going to take a screenshot or a picture, maybe a scan of what I wrote here, because like this you can't really see proper, but I'm going to scan it and place it on the screen here so that you can see what I wrote for my first draft. But the first thing you will see that for my first draft, what I wrote is the topic that I am going to choose. I simply said topic next to it. This draft, before we get even into it, I want you to notice one thing about it. You don't need me to tell you that this is a draft for you as the examiner, even if you were not doing English, for you to see that this is somebody's first draft. First, because it clearly states this is the topic. This is not how I would write it in my final answer. I wouldn't simply just say topic and write next to it. This just shows the topic that I chose. The introduction, I prefer writing out my introductions because they are the ones that tend to be challenging in the exam. And also I will, when we get to explaining how to choose your topic, I will show you why it is important that the only things that I write are my introduction and my conclusion, because they are the ones that get to change. Remember, I said that the method I use is the essay you practice at home as you're practicing is the exact same essay that you're going to write when you get to the exam room. And you may be asking yourself, but how would the topics align? You make them align, and that's why the only thing that changes, it becomes the introduction and the conclusion for you to be able to fit the narrative of the topic that you would have chosen, right? And I will explain that in detail more, but just know that for your first draft, what you need to do is make sure that you are writing an introduction that aligns with the topic, and that's why it's important for you to draft out your introduction as well as your conclusion. You need to be able to see that there is the remnants, the hitting back to the topic that still appears in both of them. And then in the body of your essay, I'm just stating what each paragraph is going to be about. I didn't really write what the paragraphs are. The only other thing that I would change if I were you in your own situation is you could even just write the first sentence to how you are going to enter that paragraph, because that's one of the things that you can waste time on. So if you can just write the first sentence of how you're going to enter that paragraph, but if you're not somebody who struggles with such a thing, then just writing what the paragraph is going to be about is important. It's not only important for just the draft, but it is also going to be useful when we do our mind map. So knowing what the paragraphs of your body needs to have is going to be something that we reuse again, and that's why it's important that even though I'm not writing out the entire essay, I'm at least outlining. This says that I have planned. Anybody who's marking this question paper can clearly see that this was me mapping out how I'm going to write my question, my essay rather. And in the introduction, if I made some errors, if I wanted to change it, I can just scribble on top of it, cancel out things right on top of them. This is what this first draft is meant to do. That is what it is meant to do. So when it comes to the topic that I chose the topic It's My Life. I was trying to think of something that can take me, that I would have gone through, that an experience that related to this topic in my high school days, but that was a long time ago, child. So the best I could do was at least morph my high school experience or what I remember of it and my university days. Obviously most of you haven't been to university yet, so your story will be something else different, but either way, I digress. I was just trying to bring you into my thought process of what this story is going to be about. Now, my essay, the topic I chose is It's My Life. And usually when I choose essay, we are going to talk in details about this as to the type of essay that you should choose when you're trying to maximize the amount of marks that you're going to get. But it needs to be a type of essay where you are telling a story, but it is not just a story for the sake of a story. It's a story that shows a character development. I think those are the best stories that if you're going to tell a story or you're going to make it a reflective essay, make sure that you are choosing something that shows growth, a personal growth. I like a personal growth story because you can't go wrong with it. A personal growth story usually in it has everything that the rubric is looking for when they're marking your question paper. A personal development story where we see where you started and how your character was built with the events that you're telling us to the conclusion and the mindset that you had at the end. And personal stories are also one thing that I recommend because they are easier to deal with. It is your story, you are not fuzzy on the details. It's usually a life story, so it's part of your life. So this one pretty much is my life. So as you can see, I chose It's My Life, which again is perfect because it hits on both of those things. It's personal and it's talking about a personal life story. So the journey that I decided, or the direction I chose to go with it, is to tell the story of how I chose my career or how I landed up into my career as a teacher, right? So when I made that, so just to give you a brief so that you can follow with me, when I was younger, usually what the decisions I made were usually type of decisions that were pleasing to my parents. As most of us can relate, you want to make decisions that are pleasing to your parents. Thing as you choose careers, you're choosing things that your parents would approve of. Even when you were choosing subjects in grade 10, do you remember for grade 10? So most of you can relate to that aspect of it, at least that in grade 10 when you were choosing subjects, most of you were not only just choosing based on what you were good at, but you were choosing on what would make sense to your parents, especially if you grew up in a kind of family where, you know, your parents are way too involved in your studies and whatnot, right? So you would choose what would make sense to them, you would choose what they would approve of, right? So this is basically what my essay is about. I started off as a girl or as a learner who was choosing to do things that were pleasing to my parents, pleasing to my teachers, pleasing to my Sunday school teacher, pleasing to every form of a figure of authority, any person that I respected in my life. And that's how I made my life decisions and my life choices. So until I got to a point in my life where I realized that, you know what, it is my life, and so I need to make decisions that are pleasing to me. Hence, I chose a career that was pleasing to me, not what would be pleasing to my parents or everybody else who's around me. So the way I started my introduction was, as a child growing up, I always seeked to please my parents, my teachers, and those of authority around me. Every decision and every choice I made was based on their approval. However, when it came to my life's purpose, I had to learn that it is my life and I have to do what fulfills me. That is my introduction. It goes well with what the topic is going to be about. You are seeing from the introduction that this person is going to tell you about how they come to the conclusion that, you know what, at the end of the day, it's my life. So in the paragraphs, the first paragraphs, I'm telling you about my school performance, how I performed at school. But in my paragraphs, I'm also going to hit on the remnants of how even my school performance was based on, I did my homeworks not because of anything else, but because I wanted to be that student that the teacher is proud of. I wanted to be that learner that or out of my siblings, on report cards day, I wanted to be the one that my parents are most proud of, right? So that, how that affected my school performance there, it was good, and it also fits into the narrative of why my character was set up the way it was set up, because my school performance was great because of me always wanting to please my teachers, me always wanting to please my parents. So this had a benefit, but because it had a benefit, it had me stuck on a certain mindset, you see. And then in the second paragraph, I now start talking about how I chose my subjects. For most of us, especially if you're not doing sciences, the subjects that you choose usually determine the type of mostly the options of qualifications that you get to qualify for in university, right? People who do sciences they always say that they are allowed to get into every field, but if you don't go the science route, and that was also another thing, everybody in my family did sciences, and because of how great my performance was at school, my teachers expected me to do science. My mother expected me to do science, my father expected me to do science, my brother before me did sciences, so it was kind of expected to me. So that tells you of a journey of having to now say, you know what, I'm going to do commerce. Yes, it's going to have pure maths, but I'm going to do commerce. So I get to tell about, it's a little bit about that part of it, and then we get to my matric results, how I performed in matric. So the way I performed in matric was, it was great. Obviously, I was aiming to please. My matric results were good, but because my matric results were good, it also landed me again on that situation I had when I was choosing subjects, that for my university everybody expected me to do something that is prestigious, something that is, you know, up there, and for me that was being a chartered accountant. So I found myself looking at being chartered accountant, and it was staring me at the face as my one option. It's like, it was like, how could you not do that? It was expected of me. It was a thing that was expected of me. So that's why in the fourth paragraph I get to my university journey. So I started off with studying Bachelor of Accounting. That's what I did. I went to UJ and I started Bachelor of Accounting. And so in this paragraph, this is where I was talk about the struggles of how I was doing well, but then I hated it, and I started to experience things like anxiety during exam times and whatnot. And then finally in the last paragraph, that's where I decided, you know what, I'm done with the degree that I did for my parents. Now I'm going to do my own degree. I want to be a teacher. And the decision that I had to how I came up to that decision, and looking back, what I would have changed or how I would have come to that decision sooner, what were the effects and the consequences of not going straight for what I wanted rather than what my parents wanted. One of them was that I lost a lot of bursaries, but anyway, that would go into my essay. And then in my conclusion, because I have already outlined all of the consequences that I had and how I came to that to the conclusion that I'm making my own decision and this is my life. In my conclusion, I said my journey taught me that I need to take responsibility for my life. My decisions now align with who I am at my core, regardless of how unpleasing they are to those around me. I am the one who has to approve and be proud of my choices and decisions because, after all, it's my life. And that's how I end my essay. Then we get to the part where now you are transferring to your final answer. By the way, once again, I don't know if I have to again state it to you that writing this first draft like this, it is very clear. Nobody is confused that this is a first draft. Not only do I not have the full paragraphs, but I have written topic at the top. I have cancelled it out. I don't need to spell it out that it is a first draft, right? So it's very clear. It's very clear on its own. It's very important though that you do this line across it, especially if you're going to write some things in your paragraphs, so that it becomes clear that those are not your final paragraphs. But you can also see that it is only one page. It doesn't have to be a full 450 words if you're doing home language, where you're writing a first draft and it is a full essay of 450 words. There's no need for that. A draft is a plan. What we need to see is that you planned. Remember, what we're teaching is that writing is a process, and the process of writing requires planning. It requires brainstorming, rather, which is where the mind map gets into it. It requires planning, which is what the draft is, before you can get to the final draft, which is your final answer. So what we want to see is the evidence that you actually planned. It's not supposed to be the full essay. This is the evidence that I did plan. This is my evidence. I planned. This is my plan. This is what I came up with. This is the topic I chose. This is how I aligned my introduction. This is how I planned my paragraphs. This is how I planned my conclusion. It's a clear plan. Then we get to the part of the mind map. Now remember those paragraphs where I just stated what is going to go into my paragraphs. The reason it was important to do that is because when you do a mind map, what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to outline how your thought process for your body is going to follow. Emphasis on for your body, not your entire essay. Meaning that on the mind map, there is no introduction, there is no conclusion. So as you are drawing your mind map, this is my mind map. Once again, I'm going to make sure that okay, you can see it, but still I will do a scan because I think that will appear better on camera for you to be able to see it. So in my mind map, you will see that in the middle we have the topic just as it is from the question paper, right? It's my life. And then in the body of it, you will see that everything I wrote there are 5 bubbles there. Those 5 bubbles correlate with my 5 paragraphs for my body. There is no introduction, there is no conclusion. It is only the 5 paragraphs that are going to be for my body. If your body has 3 paragraphs, then we are going to have only 3 bubbles in your mind map. If it has 4, we are going to have only 4 bubbles in your mind map, and each bubble is going to correlate with the first paragraph of your intro of your body, rather, and then go clockwise like so. So for me, I start with my school performance. The next bubble talks about my school choice, my subject choices. The next bubble talks about my matric results, and then the university, I just shortened it to just say university. The third one says my own decisions. Again, I was just trying to shorten it there to say that my own decisions. Once again, they still align with my paragraphs, and that's what's important about the mind map. That's what the mind map is supposed to show you. So if you did a first draft, in the first draft you outlined how or what each paragraph is going to be about, then it makes it easier for you to be able to draw your mind map. Hence the first draft is important, right? So you get to see why it is important. So it's basically copy and paste, especially if I had written them as short as they need to be. If you wrote the first sentence, right? So yours would be the first sentence of your paragraph. It wouldn't necessarily be what the paragraph is going to be about, but from the first sentence you can tell what your first paragraph is going to be about. So you will just shorten that, the main core of it, and you will write it in the first bubble of your mind map. I hope that makes it clear. The mind map only outlines what goes in your body. The first bubble is going to correlate with the first paragraph of your body. The second bubble is going to correlate with the second paragraph of your body. Meaning, in other words, that if the marker decides to choose, let's say out of your bubble, they're looking at bubble number 4 and it says university, and they skip right to the 4th paragraph of your essay, they are supposed to find you talking about your university experience or your university journey or something that has to do with your university. That fourth paragraph cannot just be a continue, because I've seen a lot of students do this. In your third paragraph, let's say you were talking about your matric results, but as you're talking about your matric results, you realize you have too much to say, so you skip and you make that the 4th paragraph. In the 4th paragraph, you're still continuing with your matric results and it has nothing to do with university. You are wrong for doing that. Do not do that. Make sure that whatever you are writing is going to be precise enough to fit where you want it to fit. Get to the point. You don't have to tell us that, so it was morning, it was 3 a.m. and it was still back in the day when we went to the garage to collect the newspaper. I cannot start there. The whole point of this paragraph is that my matric results were good, and because they were good, they landed me in the trouble of people expecting me to choose a certain qualification in university. That's the whole point of that paragraph. So I just have to mention how good my results were. If I need to extend my paragraph, maybe I can mention like what was my highest mark, what was my lowest mark, and the way my results look, and what I had applied for, what did my parents expect, what they didn't expect, what I was afraid to choose that I wanted to choose, right? That's the whole point of that paragraph. I don't have to tell you about how when the day the matric results came out, I was so scared. No. Unless that's the whole point of your paragraph, then you can do that, especially if you're writing a reflective essay and you want to get me into the feelings of what you felt. But if it has nothing to do with the storyline or the progression, remember we talked about how your story needs to show the character itself, the events, and as well as their character development as they go through up until they get to the matured version of whatever the story is, right? So that's what it needs to do. Get to the point is what I'm saying. In a nutshell, what I'm saying is get to the point. In your paragraphs, 5 lines should be enough for you to get to the point. There is no need for you to have paragraphs that are 8 lines long. No. At maximum, if you are really trying it, I would push to 7. Never, ever, okay, maybe not even 7, 6.5. I'm comfortable with 6.5. But getting to a paragraph that is this thick is not okay. 10 lines paragraphs are not okay. Get to the point. Decide what the point is, and that's what the mind map is meant to do. The mind map, having to come up with a title for your bubble. Remember, in the bubbles, you're not writing a sentence, you're writing 2 words maximum. Like you're seeing, I'm saying school performance, right? I don't have to say my good school performance like it's a sentence, or my good school performance that was affected by my parents. This is what some of you write in the bubbles of your mind map. You're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to just say school performance, and you summarizing it to 2 words. It also even shows you what that paragraph is about. So even when you need to get to the point, you're also realizing that I'm just talking about my school performance. Was it good? Was it bad? Let's get to the point. It was either good or was bad, or you were average. There is nothing more about it. And then you can tell us what made it good if it was good, what made it bad if it was bad. Nakona, still, it doesn't have to be a whole 2 paragraphs for you to tell us why your results were good or why your results were bad or why you were average, right? If you were playing, you can just say, I was playing, I was too much caught up in, it's easy. Get to the point is my point, right? And then once you are done with your mind map, right under your mind map, that is where you get to the introduction. I could do without writing the word introduction. Your introduction, if it is good enough, we will be able to tell that it is an introduction. You read my introduction just as I did it in my draft. I wouldn't change anything about it. I would just transfer it the way it is. I feel like with the way I wrote it, I wouldn't even have to write the word introduction at the top. You will not necessarily be penalized for doing that, but if you have written a good introduction, you also will not see the need for you to write introduction and underline it at the top. But if you have to, make sure that you underline it. And then for the body, we don't need headings. We don't need a heading that says body. We don't need a heading that says school subjects. This is, I know for those of you who are doing business and economics and all of these subjects where you write essays, in the bodies you have to write subtitles for your paragraphs. This is English. We're not doing that. You're not going to have any kind of heading in your body. That's what the mind map is for. The mind map is your headings. That's why it's there. That's why it's there, and that's why we need it. You see the importance of it now. So the first paragraph of your body, you don't need to write me a title for me to know what that is going to be about, because whoever is marking just needs to go to your mind map to see what this paragraph is all about, right? And if it aligns, then you are doing great. Then the second paragraph of your body, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then when you are done, in the end, that's where you can write your conclusion. Once again, I'm not crazy about the heading for your conclusion. You will not be penalized but if you write it, but I think the best thing you can do is just to simply don't write a heading and underline it, but rather start that sentence with in conclusion. Because see, for the conclusion, it's easier because you are able to start it that way. So I would say, in conclusion, my journey taught me, and then I would continue with the rest of the conclusion that I wrote previously. Now let's talk about choosing the topic. This is another issue. In my scopes that I gave, I recommended that you choose the type of essay that you choose should either be a narrative essay or a reflective essay, and I explained my reasoning for that. For a narrative essay, I think narrative essays are easier because you are telling a story. If I'm telling a story about my journey, it's simple. I know where I started, I know where it ended, I know what the conclusion was, right? So it's easy to bring somebody along to the journey. You are telling a story. The best example I like to give when I'm talking about a narrative essay is it needs to feel like, do you know the Pixar movies or the Disney movies? Usually you meet the character and they're going to have an intention to do something. They're trying to go to a competition of some sort, or they're trying to achieve something. They're trying to protect their village, whatever it is that they're trying to do, but they're trying to achieve something. They usually have a goal. They usually have a mission, and the mission is going to be introduced to you right after you get acquainted a little bit with the character, what they are. If it is a bird, then you will see that it is a bird. His name is Blue, his name is Pink, whatever their name is, and then they're going to get to kind of sort of in a way introducing you to what the mission is. That's the mission of the movie. The entire movie, if you look back at them, they are trying to get to a point of something. They're trying to achieve something. But in their journey of trying to achieve that thing, they're going to meet challenges. And this is where usually the villain comes in and whatnot. And then after that, they show you how they work together, maybe with their friends, with their family, and the conflict that they had before that separated them from their friends. Now the villain who's now in the story makes it in a way that they go back to your friend and they reconcile and they work together to beat the villain together, so that in the end they achieve whatever they were trying to achieve. Or if it's a plot twist, then we have a plot twist. Maybe that thing was not important anymore. They realize that the biggest value of life is the friends and family that they've had in front of them all along. So that's what a narrative essay is. Pick some movies are a narrative essay. So if you're taking time in between breaks of studying and you're wondering what should I watch that can still benefit to helping me with preparing for my exams, pick some movies. Watch Pixar movies or Disney animated movies. The plot line, just the way it is, you will see that there will be some character development, something that is going to challenge their values, challenge their character, challenge their person at their core, who they are. And in the end, you will see that they started off as this type of person, with this low of a maturity level, and by the end of the movie, their maturity level or their understanding or their friendship, they have depth in them. Something has grown in them, and that's what a narrative essay is. So in the scope, I said it has the protagonist, it has the events, it has the challenges, and then in the end you have either how you overcame the challenges, or you have the plot twist, like I said. And then with a reflective essay to me is pretty much the same, because with the reflective essay you are telling this exact same story, but you are putting more emphasis on the feelings that you felt. Maybe the story is about how your friend betrayed you, or how you disappointed somebody, or how you lost somebody, the pain of losing somebody. But in the end, you're not just sharing your feelings. You're not just sharing your feelings for the sake of sharing your feelings. There needs to be a character development. There is maybe let's say you're talking about a loss of a loved one, right? Maybe you started off with anger. You started off blaming God, the universe, whatever it is that you wanted to blame or you believe in, right? And you were feeling very nasty about it, and very negative about it, very angry about it, to you then learning to heal, learning to love, learning to actually see the value of life and appreciating life in a different perspective. And maybe God revealed something to you through the pain, or God taught you a different experience from that pain, and you are able to now take the lesson, the love, all the good things out of the pain instead of the negativity that you took before. The journey of what, or the events that occurred for you to end up in with that conclusion, with that character, with that mindset. That's part of the narrative. So they can be mixed. As you can see, it's reflective and a narrative. At the end of the day, you're still telling a story, but it is more focused on what your feelings were and how your feelings matured and developed. So those are my two recommendations. The reason I don't recommend the other ones is because I'm trying to make your life easier for you, is what it is. It's not that they're negative, it's not that they're bad, it's not that you wouldn't be able to get good results. It's just simply that I'm trying to make your job easier for you. A discursive essay is you have to discuss different viewpoints. You have to look at a topic that allows you to look at the pros and the cons of a thing and then discuss them simultaneously, if you get what I mean. So it is a lot to deal with, because you are trying to let's say they're giving you a statement, global warming is bad. You have to look at you have to discuss the facts where you agree with that statement, and discuss the facts where you disagree with that statement, because it's a discussion. A discussion has a yin and yang, so it is a lot to do. Hence I'm saying I don't recommend that, only for the purposes of making your life easier for you. What's another type of essay? The argumentative essay. Again, yin and yang. You have to argue for and argue against. It's still a lot. Argumentative, yes, you are arguing for and against, but you can argue from just your opinion. Whereas a discursive essay is also, it gets you because it also needs the facts with a discursive essay. Hence I said, again, it doesn't make your job easier for you. You have to look at the facts. It's not just about your personal feeling. So meaning that whatever that topic is, you have to know it very well for you to be able to discuss the yin and yang of it with actual facts. Do you see what I mean? And then when it comes to a descriptive essay is only challenging because you have to paint a picture, and that picture has to be very clear. And to save you from all of that trouble, I say stick to narrative, that's storytelling. Stick to reflective, because that's your feelings. Nobody can explain your feelings better than anyone could. So those are the two types of essays that I recommend. And then when it comes to now choosing the topic, remember that's choosing, what we were discussing just now was choosing the type of essay. Now we're talking about choosing the topic. in the line. So usually what I teach, if you are in a one-on-one with me, or if you are in my class, this is usually what I teach to my students. Remember when I was saying at the beginning of the video that usually I let my students go into the exam room knowing exactly what they're going to write. They're not going to see what topic looks like it could have something that they would write about. They know exactly what they're going to write, meaning that if it was me going into the examination, this is the story that I just wrote in my draft, that I practiced my essay right here with you right now. This is exactly what I would write. The only thing that would change, it would be the topic. So what I would choose, it would be a topic that allows me to tell the story. That's how I choose my topics. The topics does not determine to me what essay I'm going to write. I choose a topic that aligns with the essay that I have already practiced. So I want to talk about my journey of choosing my career into teaching. When I look at that topics list, there's going to be 8 topics. Surely out of 8 of them, one of them I will be able to spin for me to be able to tell the story exactly how I told it. The only thing that is going to change is the introduction and the conclusion. That's why in the draft, the first thing, the 2 things that you actually write out in full is the introduction and the conclusion, so that you can try to make them match the topic. You can try to make your story, your essay match the topic and the angle that I would go. So let's say that the topic that I have chosen has something to do with the biggest life lesson, right? The biggest life lesson that I learned. The biggest life lesson that I learned is that I need to choose my own career. So my introduction is going to be that. So when I start that introduction, it would be kind of similar to how I started that one, where I would be talking about how as growing up as a child, I was making decisions to please my parents, to please those that are around me. But the biggest life lesson that I learned is that I need to make my own decisions, the decisions that fulfill me, right? If the topic is some days are better than others, I can still write this essay where I'm talking about the day I chose to do teaching. Education as a career was a better day than the day I made a decision to study chartered accountant, only because I qualified for it, not because I loved it. So that some days are better than others is gonna be the day I decided, you know what, I'm gonna be a teacher, regardless of what anyone else thinks. So you see how I'm taking these topics back to what I practiced. So when you choose the story to practice with, the story that you use in your drafts, make sure that it is a type of story that shows your personal growth. If you can look in your life, if you can find a story that shows your personal growth, a personal development of your character, of your mindset, of how you used to view the world, if you can find that story, that is the exact story that you need to practice starting now. Write it out in full. Don't care what the topic is going to be, or what uh, uh, um if it's going to align. Don't care about any of that. Write that story down. Be sure of what you want to say in the first paragraph, in the third paragraph, in the fourth paragraph, in the fifth paragraph, right? And then go look at a question paper. When you find that question paper, choose a topic that aligns, that allows you to tell the story. Obviously, there's going to be some of those topics in that topic list that is not going to allow you to tell the story. Try something that easily allows you, or closely allows you to tell this exact same story, and then try to write the introduction and the conclusion of it. And the reason why the story needs to be personal growth is, once again, a personal growth story usually has everything that the rubric is looking for when we are marking an essay. Go look at a memorandum for English paper 3. Look at the rubric. Everything in the high mark section of the rubric, it literally aligns with a personal growth story. It talks about an outstanding response. There is nothing more outstanding than a personal growth story where we see where you started and see how you matured. That is an excellent and outstanding response. It is unexpected because it talks about you. It talks about your personal growth story. It's not just another day. So imagine if I'm given this essay of a topic of some days are better than others. Somebody is going to write a story about how, there was a day it was raining and then there was a day that it didn't rain, and they will try to make that an essay. There is nothing outstanding about that. Obviously, a sunny day is better than a rainy day. That's expected. But if I am talking about a whole journey, I'm bringing you into a whole journey of somebody choosing their life's career and saying the day I registered for education was better than the day I registered for Bachelor of Accounting. You wouldn't expect me to go that direction, but I did. It's an outstanding response. It's still appropriate because I have matched it to it. Okay, now I'm going to go into the questions that you have sent in the videos of the scopes for home language and first additional language, the scope videos that I showed up there, and I'm just going to answer some of the questions. Some of them I believe I have already answered as we were discussing this, but I just want to make sure that I have covered all the bases. So the first question that I have, I'm going to place them here as I go through them. They say, what are the key words and structure of a question that help us to know if it is a narrative or a reflective essay? Now, there is no keywords. That is the short answer. There is no keywords. You get to decide. All of the topics that you are given, you're going to be given 8 topics. Any of them, you can decide to write any type of essay that you choose to write with it, unless it is clearly stated in the topic itself that you need to argue. If you need to argue, then it's obviously an argumentative essay, or if it says discuss, then it is obviously a discussive essay. But most of them, where it's just topics, it doesn't really say whether you should make it a narrative or a reflective essay. You're the one who decides. That's why I could also confidently recommend to you that make sure that you make it a narrative or a reflective, and I discarded the rest, because with most of the topics you are allowed to choose, and so you choose for yourself. Somebody was asking, do we draw a line on the mind map? As you can see in the example that I showed you in my screenshot, you don't have to draw a line on your mind map. A mind map is clearly a mind map. The only reason we draw a line out of the draft is for you to clearly indicate that this is the first draft, especially when it is not obvious, because there are some people who would say that, you know what, I want to change the intro, how I enter my paragraphs, so they will write a little bit of their paragraphs, and maybe you get carried away somewhere there and it is a full paragraph before you know it, right? If it's still a draft and it is still not full, you are the one who knows that you still need to add to it. It is safer to write a line across it so that they see that you are done. This is just a draft. And for some of you, is you're writing a line to show, let's say you have too many scripts. There are too many scripts. Your scripts are mix match and the numbering is not really making sense. You know how it be in the exam room. So when it's not clear which one is the draft and which one is your final answer, they might mark your draft as the final answer, and that's what we're trying to avoid, hence the line across it. But the mind map is clearly a mind map, so there's no need to draw a line above it. And then somebody said, hi ma'am, are we supposed to write a rough draft on the essays of the essay and also draw a mind map separately? Yes. So you saw I started with the first draft, I wrote a line, drew a line across it, and then there was a mind map. A mind map was part of my final answer. Next question says, hi ma'am, will it be helpful to label the first one as a draft? It could be. It's not necessary if you're going to draw a line across it. The only reservation I have about it is that the final draft is still also a draft. So they're both the drafts. It's just that the other one is a first draft and the other one is a final draft. So drawing a line across it, or even writing the words draft across it, that could help. So long as it's clear that it's a draft. What we need is the clarity that this is a draft. The next question says, and this one is an interesting one. They say, My English teacher who sets papers said that the first draft is not necessary. And whenever a student comes to me with my teacher said, I'm understanding that they're either looking for us to contradict each other. They're looking for a conflict today. That I will either say, no, your teacher is wrong, or I'm the one who's wrong. But here's the truth. The truth is I'm never gonna do that. I'm never going to discredit your teachers. That's one thing you should know about me. Even if we get in contact and we're doing a one-on-one thing, my aim, my purpose, the purpose of this channel is never to contradict your teachers. I will never ever say your teacher was wrong. It will never come out of my mouth. And I realize that that's what a lot of learners look for, because they have stories about, my teacher doesn't teach. I'm not the audience for that. It will never work with me. What I will tell you is, when you come to me with a statement like this, that's with my teacher, because I'm understanding that you're not just looking for the answer of whether or not the first draft is necessary or not. You're also looking for me to validate or discredit your teacher, which, like I said, it's not going to happen. What I will say to you with confidence is, your teacher gave you an advice, and I also gave you an advice. What you need to do is take both of them. So if your teacher says to you that a first draft is not necessary, that tells me that what she taught you is how to write a perfect final draft. She gave you advice on a final draft, and she did not give you advice on how to write a first draft. So what I would do is, my teacher gave me advice on how to write a final draft. Miss Priscilla gave me advice on how to write a draft. Take both of the advices and write both. Do them both, because what I told you is not going to take away from what your teacher has taught you. They taught you everything that needs to go into your final draft. So additionally to that which they taught you, I'm saying to you, this is one more thing to add. Best case scenario, your results are going to improve, because you now not only have the information that your teacher gave you, but you also have the addition of the planning. So those marks for planning, you're also going to get them. But if your teacher is truly correct and it's not necessary, let's say that's the case, then what's going to happen is your marks are not going to change from what they have been the entire year. Because what I'm assuming is your teacher has been with you from March up until now. So the March test, the June test, and the prelim test, you were writing them with your teacher's advice, and you have been getting a certain mark for them. With my additional information, either that mark is going to increase or that mark is going to stay the same. Either way, you have nothing to lose. So my conclusion is, your teacher gave you advice, I gave you advice. Take both of them, apply both of them. The only thing that you need to worry about is time management, because what I have just done is added to your plate. So all along, you have been writing and focusing only on the final draft, and I have introduced to you that you need to add a first draft. The only thing that you need to worry about is your time management. It is not about who's wrong between me and your teacher. It is how you are going to best manage the time for you to be able to apply your teacher's advice as well as Miss Priscilla's advice. I hope that makes sense and that clears that up. Alright, grade 12s, that concludes everything that I had prepared for you for this video. Hopefully with the length of this video and all that talking that I did, it was very clear what you need to do for your paper 3 as you are going to be writing it, and I have clarified and answered all of your questions. But if for some reason you still have any more questions, the comment section is still open for you to leave your questions, and I will try to get to them as soon as possible, with the understanding that you are writing soon. But otherwise, if you do everything that we have discussed in this video and even in your scope videos, then you would have done your best, and we can confidently say that God will do the rest. So with all that being said, good luck for your examination. I wish you all the best and Godspeed. YouTube recommend you more of my videos, be sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below.